The following is part one of a two-part episode. In this episode, we cover the first few chapters of the Book of Boba Fett. In part two, we cover the last few chapters of the Book of Boba Fett.
I am not a bounty hunter. I've heard otherwise. I know that you sit on the throne of your former employer. Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect.
You were all once captains under Jabba the Hutt.
I'm here to make a proposal that's mutually beneficial. Why speak of conflict when cooperation can make us all rich?
What prevents us all from killing you and taking what we want?
If you had spoken such insolence to Jabba, he'd have fed you to his menagerie.
Please, speak freely.
Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, GC8, the podcast where we talk about movies and TV and other geek culture that happened a long time ago. A long time ago in a galaxy
far away.
Far away, yeah. Yeah, this week we are going to be talking about the Book of Boba Fett TV series based on the Boba Fett character that we all came to love from Empire Strikes Back. Before we get into that, though, what have you been up to, Rosie?
At the time of this recording, two major finales happened this week. House of the Dragon and The Handmaid's Tale. Totally addicted to both series. So just finished watching that, kind of looking back in my index to see like what I've been meaning to watch but haven't watched yet. And actually starting to watch Boba Fett. I was like looking through the Disney Plus catalog, and now I'm like, I have so many more things to watch to make up the time. And of course, I've been watching The Walking Dead. They're in their final season. They just have a couple of episodes left, and then that's done. Really been enjoying this season. I know a lot of people want to trash talk it or whatever, but I'm diehard. Watched it from the beginning. I'm going to watch it to the end, and I don't care what anybody says about it. So whatever. And want to give a shout out to my buddy Matt, who is a new listener, and he's actually my team lead at my new job that I just started a few weeks ago. And so I want to give him some recognition. So photo rules.
I can't even get
yeah.
the people that I work with to listen to my podcast. Like, and some of them actually have podcasts, which I've listened to.
But see how it is. It's like, I listen to yours. You got to listen to mine.
Exactly. No, you don't have to, unless it's your thing. If you like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, what did you do last night?
What did I do last night? Well, what I did last night is I play, as I've mentioned before, I play roller derby for the Black and Bluegrass Roller Girls. And every year we have our drag show fundraiser. Some of us skaters who are not afraid to hit the stage will go up and actually perform in drag. And we also have guest drag performers come. So last night from 2018, I brought back Axel Rosie. And and when a new character, Disco Dave did Casey and the Sunshine Band last night, and Axel Rosie did Paradise City, and it was awesome. So I love doing that. And I don't know why I don't do it every year, but I'm just going to make myself do it every year. And also, I'm just going to put it out there on recording. My partner, Rob, said that he would do some acts with me next year. So we're all going to hold him to this. Okay.
Okay. So is he like Slash level good?
I think he could be Slash level good, but I am kind of thinking that we'll do Drag Sunny and Cher, maybe.
Oh,
Yeah. I've been bugging him to do Drag Sunny and Cher forever. And actually, one time we had a conversation about that, and he was like, okay, but only if I get to be Turn Back Time Cher. I was like, whatever you want.
okay. So he's gonna wear the assless, like.
Yeah, and the big wig and strut.
Okay, I don't even want to go there right now. It's too early in the morning. We're recording this early in the morning. Okay,
I'd always do this to myself at this hour. I don't know why. Anyway, sorry, I tend to suck all the air out of the room. I feel like I took up most of your time.
No, I think the listeners are cool with that. We have a very large arc of our second season. So we started with Dune and sandworms and spice and all that. And then we went on to the samurai stuff, Lone Wolf and Cub and Mandalorian arc. And then we did the Godfather arc. And now I feel like we have the culmination of all three of these arcs in today's series, The Book of Boba Fett. So we will be talking about spice. We will be talking about samurai stuff. We will be talking about crime bosses. It all comes together right here at the end of 2022, our arc of arcs.
Our arc of arcs.
I am not going to dive into the series background, the background to the production, because there's so much out on there on the internet about it. You can find it super easy. It's not hard. But basically, you know, some of the brief things to note was that Josh Trank was doing it at first, and then Fantastic Four bombed, and then Josh Trank was out. And then I think they recruited Favreau because The Mandalorian was doing so good, but people wanted a dedicated Boba Fett series. So originally this was kind of like Mandalorian 2.5. In fact, the episode numbers continue directly from Mandalorian, as if this is season 3 of Mandalorian. And The Mandalorian plays a pretty big role in particularly later episodes of this. So I know that the Book of Boba Fett is a separate series entirely, but I'm glad we slotted it in after Mandalorian. Any opening thoughts when you first decided to take this on?
Oh, well, first of all, I was really excited about it. And I just want to start with the name of the first chapter, Stranger in a Strange Land. That's actually the title of a U2 song on their 1982 album, October, which is actually one of my favorite albums. It's not as popular as the rest of their earlier albums, War, Boy, Unforgettable Fire. October was actually a more spiritual album as well. So it was just kind of neat that they chose that as the title of chapter 1. I was like, oh, hell yes, this is just going to be good. This is just going to be good. You know what I mean? If there was a U2 fan that decided this, I just want to high five them.
Well, as an old school sci-fi geek, I have to point out that U2 took the title from the novel Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein, which is a Hugo award-winning novel, considered one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. We will go more into detail on Stranger in a Strange Land, the novel, in a future episode. I don't want to get derailed right now, though.
Now I have to read it.
Yeah. You should. Everyone should. My high school English teacher just gave me a copy. I think because she knew I was into Starship Troopers, which we talked about in a previous episode. And that's kind of Heinlein at his most right-wingy. And Stranger in a Strange Land is him at his most left-wingy. He defies political classification. But anyway, it really resonated with a lot of boomer hippie types. So I think that was kind of like, hey, here, kid, read this, Age of Aquarius crap. No, I'm kidding. It's not Age of Aquarius crap. You should read it.
Can I do a little sidebar here? Speaking of books, my partner got me the new book written by Bono, his autobiography for 40. So I haven't even started diving into that, but as soon as I do, I will mention it on the show. I'm really excited about that. Huge U2 fan, if you can't tell.
All right, so this series opens up. Boba Fett is escaping the Sarlacc that swallowed him. So it's basically takes place right after the events of the Return of the Jedi. The Jawas like steal his armor, which like I knew Jawas were scavengers, but they knew he was alive, right? Like they're like he was like, so I come to the conclusion that Jawas are just dicks. Like
Right.
I used to think they were just pesky, annoying, they collect stray droids in the desert, but no, they'll like strip your armor off and leave you to die in the sun, the two suns of Tatooine,
Right.
He's captured by sand people and can't escape or anything like that. And we find out that this is all like a dream that he's having while he's in like a healing tank.
The back to tank.
Yep. And Fennec Shand is with him, and they're like planning on taking control of Jabba's criminal empire on Tatooine. All right. Fennec, of course, played by Ming-Na Wen, who I've mentioned before, is like, she is one hot senior citizen, man.
How old is she?
She's 58.
Okay, so she's all right. Well, she has the best side eye in Hollywood. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, I think every single picture you see of her, like that's like the photo you see most often is her giving the side eye. I think even in Mulan when she's like animated, like that's like something you notice with Mulan. It opens with this scene, like the part where we're back to the quote unquote present. They're getting tributes from dignitaries. Did this automatically take you back to every like opening scene of every Godfather movie where like it's at a party? Like there's no party here, but like everybody's like coming in for their individual meetings and like bringing tributes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's pretty safe to say that there is a Godfather undertone going on in this series.
Oh yeah, and a Dune undertone in the series as well.
We'll get to the Dune undertone part soon, but this part, yeah. I mean,
this
I guess
is definitely Godfather.
Yeah, there were dignitaries that came and visited fairly early in Dune as well, but this is like totally the Godfather where they're like offering tribute, and then the mayor or the former mayor sends a guy who has no tribute and then like expects that Boba Fett is going to give him tribute.
Like that's very presumptuous. Okay.
Yeah. The next like throwback to the Godfather, which happens almost immediately, is they go out and they walk the street. Like they actually walk the street, and people are like, he's talking to people, and he has this line: Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect. Now,
I wrote that in my notes.
I said that when we were discussing the Black Hand versus Vito Corleone. You guys can go back and listen to it if you want. Johanna went into this thing about how similar they were and how like stuff like that. And I said, no, I don't think they're similar. I think that there's a major difference here, which is that Vito rules with respect where the Black Hand ruled with fear. And so everybody's like giving him like melons and stuff like that in the street. And so I wanted to mention that because, she knows we have a no spoiler rule. And I think she even said in our post recording session, have you seen Book of Boba Fett yet? And I was like, no. And she's like, because you practically quoted directly from it in this episode. So then they get attacked by assassins. Again, very reminiscent of The Godfather. Things take a slightly different turn in this, though. They are able to fight them off, and Fennec captures one of them. Boba Fett gets back to tank. We don't yet get the questioning of the captured assassin yet. This episode was directed by Robert Rodriguez, who I have loved since El Mariachi. So I was happy to see that he's like playing a major role in these this Book of Boba Fett series. Stranger in a Strange Land is kind of about how Boba Fett is new to this world and its customs and things like that. And this is something we see a lot in The Godfather. In particular, this series reminds me more of The Godfather Part 2, where Vito Corleone is an immigrant to the US and, rises to become the crime boss of New York, but then the US in general.
I have to point out Jennifer Beals. Well, she played Garza Fwip, Twi'lek owner of the Cantina. I mean, of course, we saw her way back during Flashdance, and she's just amazing. She's so graceful. She's so beautiful. And they did a fantastic job on her costuming and everything. And it was just, I didn't expect to see her in this series, and she fit right in. So I was super excited to see her.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about her because I never watched the L Word. I guess maybe at some point I will. I've always intended to, but it's always been backburnered, mostly because it's a Showtime series and I didn't have Showtime.
My sister got me into it. I wanted to explore outside of my normal realm of entertainment. You know what I mean?
You were L Word curious.
I was L Word curious, yes. And now I'm L Word, what is it? L Word Generation Q curious. In which, Jennifer Beals does continue her same character. It's a sequel to the L Word series, the L Word Generation Q. And actually they're getting ready to come out with their second season. I'm super excited about that as well. Will Bette and Tina get back together? We don't know. Anyway.
Okay. So yeah, I kind of forgot about Jennifer Beals for a long time. Like, to me, it's always Flashdance is like the immediate thing I think of,
And she did so much stuff since then, but people still connect her with Flashdance. That just won't ever end,
I noticed that she got top billing in the series, whenever I think that's actually because they do it alphabetically at the end, and Beals comes alphabetically first, but you always see her name first in the credits. Toward the end of the episode, it flashes back to his coming up in the Sand People, and he learns their ways, and they give him the black melon juice, that they all drink, which is, now we get into the Dune comparisons, because they're the Sand People. They live in the desert. They have their desert ways. And the way he comes to them is not completely unlike the way that Paul Atreides and his mom crashing in the desert and then found by the Freemen and, all of that. So,
and taken in, immersed in the culture, yada, yada.
Drinking the special drink.
That's right.
Episode 2 is called The Tribes of Tatooine. Pretty much, yeah, it deals with the different tribes of Tatooine. And this episode is really special to me, and I'll say why in a second. But basically, Boba Fett and Fennec Shan, they've captured this guy, and he tells them that he was actually hired by the mayor. And
can we talk about how they got him to fess up, though?
Yeah,
that was classic. That was so classic because he's standing over this trap door, which Jabba the Hutt, used to have some big scary creature down there that would eat you if you were dropped into it. And so this guy is thinking it's still there. And they're like, well, who sent you? And he wouldn't say it. So they dropped him in there, and he's like, I was sent by the mayor. Okay. And then Fennec Shan is like, yeah, it's empty. Thanks for that.
Yeah. So they basically get a visit from the twins, who are two Hutts. They're two Jabba looking. I don't know, what is a Hutt, a species or a family? I think it's a family. But
I think it's a family, but I don't know what their species name is. But they're, definitely Jabba the Hutt's family, and they're twins.
And for big blobs, they look pretty different to be twins. But they're apparently twins. And
one has a fan and one doesn't. That's how you know which one's the girl.
Well, they're different color too, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, they bring Chrysanthemum, which is this Wookiee.
He's a badass looking Wookiee too. Love him.
Yeah. It ends in a standoff. Neither really gets what they want. We do find out that the Tuscans are senselessly slaughtered by like people shooting from a train, kind of like Native Americans. That comparison is hard to miss. So there's a Western kind of component here going on too.
Definitely a Western component, but we'll talk about that later.
We also learned that spice is a valuable commodity, but we never really find out what doing spice is like. Drugs here are more like taking a psychedelic lizard up your nose.
Right.
That's like more like Fett remembers the Tuscans teaching him combat and all that. He eventually goes off on this peyote thing in the desert, which is really him just having a lizard up his nose, you know? And then like
he really had his Jim Morrison moment. Yep.
And then when he comes back in from the desert in robes, when he shows back up, he looks just like Marlon Brando. The other tribe that I wanted to mention in this, we talked about the Hutts, and we talked about some of the other crime families, and we talked about the Sand People. What we haven't talked about is the speeder bike gang. We'll get more into the speeder bike gang in the next installment.
Let's mention the tribe that was actually on the train. The Pike Syndicate. They're the ones running the train through Tuscan lands. And this is also a moment where Boba Fett really gets to show and kind of flex his authority, shows what kind of ruler he's going to be, because he's like, you know what? This is Tuscan land. So if you are going to run your trains through this land, you are going to pay the Tuscans to run the train through this land. And then he sent them back home on foot. And they were like, the Tuscans will protect you. They'll protect you and make sure that you get home. But from now on, when you use this land, instead of shooting at them, you're going to pay them to use this land.
Right. Chapter 3, The Streets of Mos Espa. Here we get another gang. They're cyborgs. And here's what I really love, because this is a throwback for me. They modify their body. So their gang is literally called the Mods. All right. And I don't know if our listeners know this, but I have a green Vespa, with a bunch of mirrors on it and stuff like that. And like this gang's speeder bikes are actually like speeder Vespas.
Yes.
And they're like in the color scheme, the candy colors that Vespas come in, like blue and red and green and yellow and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they dress like mods. They're called mods, but they combine that with like body modification, like, they modify their body with droid parts. So I thought that was really like that part was thrown in this series for me, for me to enjoy. I was the person that was made for,
And I love how Boba Fett handled that. Once again, he flexes his authority and shows what kind of leader he's going to be. These kids were stealing water from somebody who was way overcharging for them.
There was a time when I was renting a place and the job that I worked at went out of business. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have a job. And I mentioned this to my landlord, and he's like, if you need work, come work for me, And so I ended up like working for him, helping like rehab apartments that he was then going to rent out and stuff like that, so that I could pay my own rent. That's what he does when these mods say there is no work to be had, blah, blah, blah. He's like, okay, then you're going to come work for me,
Yeah. And that guy's like, wait a minute, they stole from me. It's like, you overcharged them anyway. Get over it.
I mean, instead of like putting the screws to them, he's like, well, then come work for me. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yes, one of the speeder bikes looks exactly like my green Vespa.
I love that.
We also get Danny Trejo in this. Danny Trejo is awesome. He always plays the heavy and stuff like this. He pops up in a lot of stuff that Robert Rodriguez does because they're like second cousins or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they didn't know that. Danny Trejo was already established he was a criminal, right? He was incarcerated in one of the major prisons in the Southwest. He's got a criminal past before he came to Hollywood, and then he got all these roles playing, the heavy, a thug, a bad guy, and he speaks Spanish, and Robert Rodriguez speaks Spanish and was an Austin filmmaker, and he had actually cast him in one or more things before they knew this, and then they were at some big family reunion. And they're like,
what are you doing here?
Meet your second cousin. And they're like, oh, so he shows up in a lot of stuff that Rodriguez directs.
I love Danny Trejo. He's just awesome in everything he does. I just love him. And the fact that he was an animal trainer this time was just chef's kiss. Perfect.
This episode ends where the Pikes are on their way to Mos Espa, and there's basically going to be a war. And as we all know, gang war is bad for business, and like everybody tries to avoid it, but it happens.
It happens.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get our...
I'm going to spare you from reading through like the whole recipe. It is a non-alcoholic drink recipe that's actually family friendly and is kind of like a dessert. And it's called Black Melon Milk. And you can find it on StarWars.com. Beat the Tatooine heat with some black melon milk garnished with Gatterfee sticks, which are made with a chocolate kiss stuck onto a pretzel stick that's dipped in chocolate. So it looks like the Gatterfee stick. And then the black melon milk, it's made with simple syrup. It's very sugary. I mean, it's made with like oat milk, sesame seeds, vanilla, whipped cream. It has tapioca, and it's interesting. Definitely check that out on StarWars.com. But I really think the most fun part of this whole drink really is the Gatterfee sticks. But yeah, so enjoy reading up on that. It looks like a super sweet drink that you would get at Starbucks or something.
So it's mostly like simple syrup and water, right? And oat milk.
And oat milk, yeah. But yeah, mainly sugar and water and other kinds of sugar.
Okay.
So satisfy your sweet tooth with some black melon milk on
all right.
find the recipe StarWars.com.
All right, chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. Fett's in the back to tank, and we get a flashback to him finding Fennec Shand injured and takes her to a droid mod parlor.
Like a mod parlor, yeah.
Which is like a tattoo parlor, except for it's for droid modifications. And they save her life. One thing that I've noticed about this series is that Star Wars in 1977 referred back to a lot of the science fiction stuff that came before Star Wars, mostly space opera, big armadas in space, that kind of stuff. We're getting a couple of different flavors of science fiction that came after Star Wars in Star Wars. So now we get some stuff like more cyberpunky, so it's like more Blade Runner-y and stuff like that in Mos Espa, and I don't know how well that fits with Star Wars or not, but there was always body modification. Remember, Luke lost his hand and got a droid,
yeah, it's a droid hand.
Yeah, so it existed, but it seems to go even further down the line into some of these alleys of types of sci-fi that didn't even exist when the original Star Wars came out. He basically gets Fennec Shand to join him. Since he saved her life, she's like, well, what do you want? And he's like, I just want your help. An interesting bit of dialogue that they have when they're talking after he saved her and she revives is he says, I was ready to leave hunting behind. And she says to him, people like us don't get to decide when we're finished. Like, yeah, that again, straight out of like the Godfather, like I thought I got out of this and they pull me back in, that kind of thing, it's like straight up. And I also liked, speaking cinematography wise, the composition where they're sitting by the fire with his ship in the background, that night scene, that's like one of the most beautifully shot bits of this series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I also want to point to the fact that the Tuscans had just been slaughtered too.
Yes.
And then he almost loses Fennec Shand. So he saves her. And, they're having a conversation and she's like, well, I'm an independent contractor. And, he wants her to basically be his right-hand man. And, she's like, I want to be an independent contractor. I like my freedom and stuff like that. But one thing he did say is you can only get so far without a tribe. He was a loner for so long. The Tuscans took him in. He immersed himself in the culture and fell in love with them. Then they were taken from him. And he realized, like, you can't really fully make it through this life alone. And I really just had to write that line down.
Yeah.
Struck home.
He and Fennec, they get his ship back. They go to the Sarlacc looking for his armor. But toward the end of the episode, he calls a meeting of all the crime bosses. They don't agree with him, but he's like, okay, just all you have to do is remain neutral while I take on the syndicate,
And they agreed to it.
That whole meeting of all the crime bosses, again, reminiscent of what Vito does to unite the 5 families in the Godfather series.
Yeah.
We'll see how well that works out.
I can't remember the name of the tribe. But that is actually, that's important to know. But my brain is not working for me. Like I said, drag show last night.